It, it's not just about getting older.
Oh, wait, then I'm not.
Okay, I'm going to continue to let people in. I know we've got a few more that are
I
joining.
gotta, I need a second here. I'm going in the wrong direction.
All
There we
right.
go. I'm not very techy. It stresses me out, the tech part of it. I mean, literally, I literally was, I can't, it's not working out. I don't know whether to do a slideshow or to do a bit. I hate this stuff.
Yeah, we did a practice call before this, you guys, just so that Eric would
I
feel
was
more
getting pretty upset.
So we just want to welcome you. Thank you for coming on a Tuesday night. I know we had said that this will be possibly 90 minutes, but we always try to make it a little bit earlier than that. But Eric's got a great presentation tonight. So I'm actually going to turn the time over to him so he can introduce. And if you don't know a lot about him, he can give you a little bit of his backstory.
Yeah, so I'm still trying to calm down from the septic situation. So that was at like 4 o'clock, and I'm like, I'm not finished my stuff, and we had all this cleanup to do, and oh my gosh. But now I understand how a septic works and what's required to maintain it yearly. So I felt like I came out a winner. So I thought, I mean, I recognize a couple names, but for people that don't know who we are, and which is probably a lot of what people who will watch in terms of the recording, um, I've been actually coaching online since 2004, which is before really online coaching was a thing. And Amy came in not too long after me. So we're kind of part of the OG category for online coaching. And I got into online coaching because right out of university, I started to work for a company called Muscle Tech. And I'm sure a lot of people who, since we're all around the same age bracket, probably remember the product Hydroxycut, right? So Hydroxycut was in all the fitness magazines, and it was the before and after transformations and so on and so forth. And my job in that company, I was the head trainer slash coach for all of the before and after transformations, for all the female before and after transformations that appeared in the magazine. So you'd have, like so and so, Amy lost, 12 pounds in, 8 weeks with Hydroxycut. But they'd also have to do to make it legal, say, in conjunction with diet and exercise. And we all know that it wasn't the supplements, it was the diet and exercise. So that was basically all me. And then I essentially started doing some coaching online just because I was, you know, um, playing around on the bodybuilding forums back then. And in the first kind of probably 75% of my coaching time, I worked a lot with competitors and people that wanted to look like competitors and people that wanted to look like they train. So I always really liked the term look like you train, and that's why we've called our group Look Like You Train, because for me, it's a term that kind of encompassed all sorts of different goals, whether that be like lots of muscle and super lean, or a little bit of muscle and toned and a bit of definition, because the common denominator is weight training, right? For all those different goals of looking like whatever your version of working out is, weight training is a critical component of that. Building muscle is a critical component of that. So that's kind of where the umbrella term came from. And then as we got older, we stopped really being interested in competitors because our audience, being a long-term audience, also grew up with us. So they're not competing, although there's former competitors in that category, but they're just going through this over 40 midlife transition, menopausal transition. Amy's turning 48 next week. I'm 52, and a lot of our clients and our group is in this type of age bracket, right? So interestingly enough, um, the consequences of what a over dieted competitor or a competitor who did a lot of shows, what they experienced, excuse me, hormonally and metabolically is very similar to what the hormonal and metabolic environment looks like for a woman going through the perimenopause to menopausal transition, meaning they have the very similar hormonal responses, reactions in terms of what happens to sex hormones, what happens to stress hormones, how reactive and unresponsive the metabolism seems, so on and so forth. So when you have a person who's coming in from a really dieted background, not necessarily a competitor, but just a lots of dieting in their history, and then they go through the midlife transition, those women tend to have a rougher time of it and be more symptomatic because you have the unnatural impact of dieting a lot and under eating so much on top of the natural changes that occur during that menopausal transition, right? So, anyways, here we are. So, it won't be 90 minutes, but what we're going to talk about is training today. So, there's obviously a large nutrition component to this whole process, but what I find is really common, and I love training. Training's kind of like where I kind of nerd out and like to, stay up to date on the research and so on and so forth. The biggest issue is that most women don't appreciate that the environment that they're working with, their physiology, their metabolism, their body has changed, right? And you know that because obviously you experienced things that you didn't experience before these changes started to occur in your 40s. But then there's no thought process or connection to the fact that you need to approach exercise and nutrition differently as well. So, we're going to talk about why you might be training hard, but still not looking like it, independent just of the nutrition component, because that's obviously a large reason why that might be too, right? So, we're calling it the training audit workshop, diagnosing what's really keeping you stuck after 40. So, there's going to be three kind of like mistakes. There's more than three, but I've focused on three obvious ones. And then we'll do a little training quiz that I put together, and you'll be able to essentially we'll do a 10 question quiz together. And then it'll spit out what type of training archetype you fall into. And then we'll talk about what the corrections are. So hopefully I can just manage the slides here without messing up. But yep, so far not good. Okay. So this is kind of the overall thing. Why what worked at 30 stops working at 45. Training mistake number one, which I'm calling the intensity gap. This is the physiology or of training to near failure or proximity to failure. The second one is volume and frequency overload, essentially training too many times a week and doing too much volume, too many sets per muscle or per workout each time you train. Third one is the fatigue trap. This is the person who is, well, as it says, training for fatigue. They associate a good workout with essentially feeling like they've trained hard, maybe sweating, maybe just the sensation of having a good workout, which is really not an objective way of measuring whether your training is doing anything for you. I have a video demo here. This should probably be pushed up towards point three of Amy, just showing a good example of what really close to failure looks like. Because, we train at home a lot, but we recently started training in a commercial gym as well, just to change the environment. And I like to watch. I take long rest intervals, which you'll see you should too. And I like to just people watch in the gym. And I've done this on purpose now, when I go to the gym, with women especially, just to see how hard girls train. You have a lot of times women are consistent, showing up consistently. If you train at the same time of day all the time, you tend to see the same crowd all the time, right? And what I observe is that most women do not train to the degree uh, or to the intensity level as they need to essentially start producing some changes in their body. So this set of Amy is just the last few reps of a shoulder press set. And as we look at it, I'll explain what you should notice about that set for yourself when you train tomorrow. And then we'll do the quiz, and then we'll wrap up from there. Okay. If you have any questions that pop up, you can put them in the chat. I will circle back when we're done, but I won't probably stop and answer them. Maybe Amy can maybe type some answers to them if they're relevant to just typing answers. But me trying to answer a question along the way will tend to just throw me off and I'll just get distracted and forget what I was saying. Okay. So it's not just about getting older, although it kind of is, because you are the age component is obviously associated with the transition of perimenopause to menopause and the midlife hormone changes, right? So I just got something in the way here. So the hormonal environment that once made all sorts of training styles forgiving when you were younger is disappearing or has disappeared. And most women are still training like nothing has changed. This is the point. You tend to have, I hear this all the time where whether it be in a DM or an application or even anywhere really, where people used to train a certain way and all of a sudden they're noticing that the things that used to work don't work anymore. They're not producing results, they are making them not feel as good. You know, ultimately, it's just not working, right? And that's the common thing. What used to work isn't working anymore. So let's look at I gotta actually take down this down here for a minute. I got things in the way. Okay. This is what's happened. This is a reality, right? And this is a real harsh reality, and it's super important because as people get older, they often just focus on body fat, right? And eventually people stop caring. But in the time of life when we do care, it's fat loss, fat loss, fat loss. But ultimately, what's really happening to your body is muscle loss, strength loss, which over time leads to independence loss, bone loss, fall risks, fracture risks, all sorts of these things. So the stats are that you will start to lose 3 to 8% of your muscle per decade after 30. And this significantly increases in percentage as you get older. Not just age related though, it's specific to the perimenopause menopause transition. So it's, as I say in the third point here, it's independent of aging. So when you look at the research, muscle loss accelerates um, during the menopausal transition, regardless of how old you are when it happens. Okay. The second thing is after 50, you're losing 0.5 to 1% per year. Strength loss is even higher. It's 2 to 3% per year. So it's even faster than your muscle. So it's happening, it's critical. And if you look at people as they get older, what's happening? They get weak, they get more frail, they can't get off the chairs as fast. You just lose that functional ability. So someone who is not training appropriately, knowing when we know that muscle loss is happening anyways, if you're not actively trying to counter it by optimizing how you train, there's a difference between workouts, right? Someone that just says, I weight train, that could mean all sorts of things. I was having a DM conversation with someone the other night, and she said, well, I said, what's your workouts look like? And she's like, well, when I get down on the mat to do my exercises, I'm like, what do you mean you get down on the mat? Right? Like this automatically, I can tell is not the type of training that that is going to be productive because there's no opportunity to get stronger and based on just hearing mat-based exercise is not strength training, right? So it's super important just to understand outside of the aesthetic part, the look like you train part, it's very functional and it's really critical because you're going to lose it if you're not training for it, right? So in contrast, when you do start to train appropriately for it, and our look like you train group is full of these women, they get stronger, right? If you're getting stronger, you can't be losing muscle because strength gains are directly correlated with muscle gains outside of when you're a beginner. So if you're anywhere from intermediate and up, when you are getting stronger, you are stimulating muscle growth. It is impossible to be losing muscle while you are gaining strength. So we have tons of ladies that are in there that are progressively getting stronger week in, week out, month in, month out. So they're literally countering what the research and the data says is happening to every other woman that's not actively doing this. So, critical point, it isn't inevitable if you're training appropriately. You can counter this very well, very, very well if you train properly. Okay, the complete hormonal picture. What changes after 40? So, what your hormones used to do when you were younger and you could get away with any type of training. And when I say any type of training, I mean any type of training. Circuit training, boot camps, calorie burning stuff, CrossFit, metabolic workouts, drop sets, supersets, all these really high intensity fatigue type of huff huff puff 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 training, you could get away with those types of workouts. Once hormones change and you get into your 40s and 50s, they just hit differently. So when you were younger, you had healthier levels of estrogen, so more elevated levels of estrogen. Estrogen is a hormone that um, really fluctuates in the early to mid perimenopausal years, and then it really starts to drop as you end perimenopause and start to get ready to transition into the postmenopausal phase when your ovaries kind of wind down, right? Um, Estrogen is very helpful for muscle protection, helps your recovery, helps with the ability to build muscle as well indirectly. Progesterone levels are is the hormone that drops in early perimenopause, and this is a hormone that's very critical in terms of stress regulation. And of course, if you're on HRT and take progesterone, you know it helps with sleep quality. The issue here, as we talk about cortisol regulation, is that when you're under 40, and before these hormone changes start to happen, there's a balance between progesterone and estrogen that's naturally occurring in your body. And it's this balance that creates the stress buffer against high stress. So you can be doing all sorts of wacky things, have a lot of stress in your life that's not even training or exercise related. It could just be life stress. You have a defense when these hormones are at healthy levels that allows your body to not face the consequences of what not having a stress buffer creates, which is where you see all the symptoms appear for women in perimenopause. So once progesterone drops, which is the early change in perimenopause, so progesterone drops early perimenopause, estrogen drops late perimenopause, but you lose the cortisol regulation. And therefore, this is why one of the early signs that women complain about is a redistribution of where they carry fat, right? So belly fat is the complaint. I may not have gained a lot of weight, but I'm noticing that I'm holding fat in different places. That's the explanation. Estrogen and progesterone balance is changing. Estrogen starts to fluctuate all over the place. Progesterone just going like this on a steady decline, which changes your body's whole ability to regulate cortisol. The additional issue that comes here is that cortisol is directly connected to blood sugar regulation and insulin sensitivity. So when these stress hormones are chronically elevated, and it's not that cortisol is a bad hormone, it has important functions in your body, but it's supposed to have a rhythm, right? If it's naturally following the proper diurnal rhythm, it'll be elevated in the morning because it's a wake up or alert hormone, and it will just gradually decline towards the nighttime so you can fall asleep. If it was inverted, which is one of the regressions that people experience when metabolism is becoming more reactive, the real world effect of that is you wake up tired and then at nighttime you're wired, right? So you're wired and tired, you don't have good quality sleep, so on and so forth. So when this is all out of rhythm, you lose that blood sugar regulation effect that proper rhythm creates. And that can be also seen then with the 3 a.m. wake up, which is often a blood sugar instability situation where your blood sugar is dropping, and then your body has to send a bit of an emergency signal to your brain to get some. And cortisol is involved in that. And since it's a wake up alert readiness hormone, you wake up ready and alert, right? So you lose all this when this was all really, stable when you were younger. So as they decline, muscle becomes more vulnerable to breakdown, your recovery goes down. So again, circling back to some of these anything goes workouts, they make you more tired, they make you more fatigued. You might have some puffiness or kind of water retention feeling to that, which is what's considered a kind of an altered stress response in your body. The one thing that's really big is that just your stress sensitivity dramatically increases. So things that you might have felt as a 4 on a 10-point scale, those same things are now like an 8. So when you look at workouts that are really kind of the traditional high intensity stuff, short rest interval, hit workouts, boot camps, CrossFit, these are stressful workouts anyways. And in a normal situation, they're fine, right? Because cortisol can go up and come down during workouts. That's really fine. It's the chronic elevation that's the problem. So when you're in this midlife transition, you have a chronic elevation. So the last thing you want to do is provide any stimulus that creates more of that elevation, right? That could be, all the workouts I mentioned from a nutrition standpoint. It would be things like, low carbs, ketogenic diets, intermittent fasting. These are all things that are that require cortisol to create to fill in the gap that is created by not consuming carbohydrates because your body still needs them for certain functions, right? Training tolerance decreases, so you don't tend to recover as well from what you're doing. Maybe you experience longer muscle soreness, things like that. And honestly, your whole entire margin of error shrinks, both training wise and nutrition wise. So, the way I explain stress is that you have basically this dial at the top that's basically a stress dial, right? And everything in your system is connected. So think of it like an orchestra as opposed to like solo acts. So whether it's digestion or reproduction or whatever, all of these systems are connected. So when the stress dial goes up, your body will prioritize certain systems and deprioritize others. But there's only kind of one pool of recovery, right? So you have inputs that could be training stress. You can have life stress, which is often the case in midlife, right? You might have kids that are stressful. You have a job, you have aging parents, right? There's all sorts of things. Your body doesn't, differentiate recovery from these sources of stress. Hormonal stress, which could be natural just from the transition, it could be unnatural because now you're exposed. This is the other thing, and I'll say sleep disruption. This is the hormonal one when I say exposed. What a lot of people blame on midlife hormone changes is not just midlife hormone changes. These changes don't prevent progress at all. They make it different. They make it more challenging if you're approaching it the same way you used to. But like I said a minute ago, if you have good, healthy hormones like you did when you were younger, you have a buffer, right? Now you don't have the buffer. So, what a lot of symptoms come from is the exposure to what you were doing or the consequences to what you were doing before. So, you may have erratic eating schedules, inconsistent calorie intake. Most women, if they're not on some type of structured plan, are either uh, well, if they are in a structured plan, it's usually a calorie deficit, so that's under fueling. And if they're not, they're just kind of eating, right? They're just kind of winging it, and that tends to be chronic under eating as well. So you get more exposed to the consequences of those lifestyle choices in perimenopause on top of the natural changes that are already occurring in perimenopause. Okay, the first one is the intensity gap. So back to what I said in the beginning, that I see most females when they're training, they could have good form, you know, good exercise selection, but they're stopping these sets too far from failure. And failure is one of these things that is learned. It's a skill. So just if I was to talk to a beginner or a beginner intermediate person, they wouldn't necessarily be able to train to true form failure because you have to learn how to do that. You have to learn how to maintain form through hard reps when it gets uncomfortable, so on and so forth. But I would say it's 3 to 4 reps on average is where most people stop and think the set is hard enough that it's time to stop the set. But this is a few reps prior to the real trigger that you need to start to create that muscle building adaptation. Okay, so this is the physiology of where muscle building actually happens. So when I say mechanical tension, I just mean heavy loads that are progressing over time, right? So your body needs to have that high level of tension on the target muscle. This is the only trigger, excuse me, for muscle growth. We used to think it was a combination of this, muscle damage, and also the metabolic effect. So like stuff like pumps and all the training experience you would have and training feelings you would have when you're training maybe faster or with higher reps or shorter rest intervals or things like that. The muscle damage and the metabolic component, they have been debunked. So it's literally there's one trigger, mechanical tension. That's it. So this is high force production under load. This creates that muscle building signal, which lasts 2 to 3 days, 48 to 72 hours. And then you have an adaptation, right? Increased strength, increased muscle mass. The key, though, is you have to be able to recover before you can adapt, right? So if your recovery is now not as good, then by the time you're hitting a workout again or a muscle again, you could perhaps not have that elevation because the recovery is delayed. So, as I said here, mechanical tension is the primary driver of muscle growth. It requires high force production. Whoops. Near muscular failure. That's the key. So, what we know about building muscle, we lean towards the lower rep range, and I'll explain why when we get there. But technically speaking, muscle can be built anywhere from 5 reps to 30 reps, right? As long as you train to near failure, where you can't do another rep in the same form that you were doing all the other reps in. So it's not that you train to failure, but as you get closer, you know what commonly happens is that people tend to loosen up the form just to get the reps. Where when you get to those last few reps before failure, these are the reps that you need to be the best, have the best form on because they're really the only ones that create that muscle building adaptation trigger. So if you were doing 15 reps, it's really only the reps 10 to 15 that are doing anything. The first 10 are kind of warming up to the hard reps. So the hard reps of the set are when you want to do the opposite of loosening up your form. You want it to be as good as possible. So if you're stopping a few reps short of the trigger reps, then you can still have what feels like a hard workout and what feels like a productive workout, but you're not reaching the threshold where this muscle building trigger around muscle protein synthesis is happening at all. Okay, true failure. I have perceived failure here, but here's a video of Amy the other day doing shoulder press, and we'll watch it first. This is just the last couple reps. Okay. So that I would, let's watch it one more time. So the one thing you're going to notice when you get into the reps that count is the push or the pull gets slower. Like you're always even from rep 1 trying to create as much force as possible, right? But when the reps start to slow down against your will, those are the tension reps. Like that's an obvious sign that you're in the tension reps. The reps that your face starts to change, you got to, grunt and make weird faces. That's the trigger, right? Those are the right reps. So this set here would have been 1 rep. She would have failed on the next rep, right? Like 100%. Next rep, she's not getting at all. So this is 1 rep from failure. So the sweet spot is really 1 to 2 reps. So anywhere from technically 0 to 2 is a very similar training effect in terms of adaptation. I would say the more experienced you are and the more familiar you are with like training close to failure, the better off you are at 1 to 2 reps short. If you're in the earlier stages of your training career, I would say training to failure probably makes more sense so that you learn that because you're probably not really training to your full failure capacity until you develop a skill through the practice of trying to train to failure. And once you're familiar with what failure is, then you can learn and understand what reps in reserve means and what 1 rep short of that or 2 reps short of that feels like. So I could just watch that set and see there's no way she's getting the next rep. And when I train, I know too, like you just know based on the experience of prior sets or prior workouts over time that the next rep's not happening, or I might have 1 or 2. You just know how many you have just through the practice of doing so. So that's the key there. Most people are not taking the set to that level right there, but that's the trigger. Like that is the trigger. So the reps slow down, the face contorts, and that's really it. Okay. So this is a kind of a rudimentary, rough type of test. It's not perfect, but it will give you a rough idea of how well you took a set to failure or how accurate you might have been in your decision to stop a set. So I would want you to pick a safe and stable exercise. So you're not going to do this on like a squat, right? Or anything like that. You would pick, you could do it on a dumbbell press like Amy, but the key with dumbbell work is like machines are obviously going to be more stable, but the more training experience you have, the more you can create stability in dumbbell work on your own, just naturally. But point being, Pick a safe and stable exercise that you know well, right? So, a really easy way to do this if you train in a commercial gym is on a machine, shoulder press machine, chest press machine, something like that, right? If you're at home, a dumbbell exercise, you're going to do a set of what you think is failure, right? With good form. It's form failure. So it's not form, it's form failure, not failure. You could probably squeak out some extra reps with some more body English, but it's really with standardized form that hasn't changed throughout the set. And the moment that starts to break down, that's technically failure for you. Then you rest 10 seconds and see how many more reps you can do. If you can do a few more reps, you definitely stop too early. I say two plus here. You stopped too early and had at least another rep in the tank. If you can do one rep after a 10-second break, you're probably about a rep from failure. If you can't do any, you're pretty much there. So when I was talking to Amy about this today, I'm like, 10 seconds rest, you might have got one rep at most on that push. I probably think you don't, I probably think you wouldn't even have got one, right? So, so try that tomorrow, pick your exercise, and this is how you'll learn what that proximity is. You could do this for your favorite exercise for any body part you're using in your program, provided it's a safe exercise, right? So nothing where you can risk getting hurt. Oh, what did I write down here? So the goal is to train consistently within 1 to 2 reps of true failure and occasionally to failure. And like I said, if you're more on the beginner intermediate side, you're good to go to failure because you need to learn what that's like on repeat for every body part, for every exercise that you're doing. And then as you become more experienced and your weights are heavier, those weights are then going to be more demanding on your nervous system. Training to failure, once you're pretty strong for you, is way harder to recover from. And the extra gain from the half rep you don't even get offers you nothing from 1 to 2 reps from failure. So the sweet spot, once you understand failure, is 1 to 2 reps. This is the key. This is like of all the other things we talk about, this is a really big one because if you have all the other training variables right, you don't train, we'll talk about it, but you don't overtrain, you don't do too much volume, X, Y, and Z. If you miss this one, it doesn't matter how many other training variables you have right, it's not going to happen for you. It's just not going to happen. Okay. Volume and frequency overload. So this is the error of training too many days a week and doing too much volume per workout, total sets, or per muscle in a workout. Okay. So common pattern that I would see in a lot of female trainees is training, 5, 6 days a week, a lot of volume per session, so lots of sets. I was on a comment thread on our page today, and we were talking about laterals, and someone said they do this and this and this, and then finish off with laterals. They do a drop set, and I'm like, there's so much redundancy there. That kind of volume after a certain point is not doing anything but creating more fatigue. So what we know about training and muscular adaptations, the very first set you do, the fresh set stimulates the most muscle fibers, right? The next set, less, the next set, less. And as you progress, the fatigue goes up, the muscle building stimulation of the sets goes down. So there's really no point in adding more and more and more once you've stimulated the muscle to adapt. It's just fatigue. So they do, I was supposed to say, yeah, most sets to failure. So, and then training through that fatigue regardless. This is the most common pattern that I see of someone who is a regular trainee. And you can get away with this when you're younger. It's still not optimal when you're younger, but you can get away with it totally. If that person, when they were younger, moved to training more as we will talk about now, which is really kind of the research-based, evidence-based way of training, they would 100% make better progress. So the optimal approach overall is 3 to 4 days a week, 5 to 6 hard work sets per muscle per week. Seems like not a lot, but this is where the tipping point happens where more volume doesn't produce any more strength gains or muscular adaptations. And there's lots of studies on this. So the key is those hard work sets. And if you're taking 5 to 6 work sets per muscle to the level of, for example, what we saw in Amy's video, you can't do more. You just can't, right? You're not training, you're just not training hard enough if you can do a lot more than that. It's distributed across workouts, and you need to have full recovery between workouts. So the reason we say 3 to 4 days a week is because of what we said earlier around recovery. So when we build out look like you train programs, we do a 4 day block and we do a 3 day block. And then people often ask, well, how do I choose between the 3 and the 4 day? One of them is how many is what your schedule allows. Some people just want to train 3 days a week. They don't want to train 4 days a week. So there's just the logistics or the practicality of preference. However, there's another component in here too, and it's based on recovery. If a person has lots of symptoms, their biofeedback is just kind of wonky. And by biofeedback, I mean things like sleep quality, sleep quantity, morning energy, digestion, cravings, appetite. All these things are kind of struggles. That person should be training 3 days a week and not four to get the extra day off, and they will progress better. It doesn't mean they can't graduate to 4 days once that all those biofeedback symptoms smooth out, but they're going to make much better progress on 3 days over four. And there's really no disadvantage to that either, because, I'd argue in some cases, when you do a 3 body program, it's typically going to be a full body setup. When you do a 4 day program, it's typically going to be an upper lower split. So in an upper lower split, then you end up hitting each muscle group 2 times per week instead of 1 time per week, which is not enough. And in a full body split, you can hit each body part 3 times a week and have the total volume distributed over 3 workouts instead of two, right? So both of these are really good setups, and they what's the word I'm looking for? I'm missing the word that's coming to that I want to come to me, but if a person thinks, I don't even know how to say this, ultimately, some people think that 4 days is going to be better than 3 days because it's one more workout. Hence, 5 or 6 is better than 3 or 4, but that's not the case. It's the content of the workout that matters. So we might do, 2 to 3 hard near failure sets per muscle. I usually default to two per exercise per workout. And then we're doing that multiple times per week. So that way we're not doing so much volume in a workout that we can't recover from. And if you look back when we looked at the muscular adaptation was 2 to 3 days, if you trained a body part split or a body part a day type of program, by body part split, I mean like, traditional bro training, chest and biceps Monday, legs Tuesday, shoulders and triceps Thursday, back on Friday. You do all the volume in one workout, which is a recovery issue, but you also only have that muscle protein synthesis elevation for 2 to 3 days, and then 4 days of nothing. So right off the bat, if somebody was doing, let's say, 10 sets for a body part on Monday and then not again until the next Monday, you'd automatically be better by doing 5 sets twice per week. One, you have less to recover from for that muscle. And two, instead of having a boost on Monday and then a big flat line until the next Monday, you have two times that muscle protein synthesis is stimulated per week. On a 3 day split, it's 3 times per week. It's just less volume per muscle, which means the recovery is also enhanced as well. So your body has a limited recovery capacity. Training 5 days a week with high volume per session creates more damage than capacity can repair. So you're not recovering, you're not adapting unless you're recovering first, right? So you can't make any progress unless you recover from the workout first. And we have to accept that the recovery capacity in midlife dramatically drops. So the common pattern that I would see is, let's say someone's doing 10 plus, maybe 10 to 15 sets in a total workout is not uncommon, which is a good 2 to 3 times what you really should be doing on a properly built program. So reduced hormone support makes this recovery crisis worse. Fatigue trap. So this is the person who is training fast, um, training with short rest intervals, and I find that from a mindset standpoint, they're the ones who associate the gym with getting in shape, losing fat. Had another DM conversation the other day, and the woman was explaining how she had gained weight. because she wasn't working out as much. And I had to explain to her that's not the case. You gain weight because you have more calories coming in than going out. And traditional weight training is not very calorie burning intensive anyways. So this person's optimized. They're basically gauging a good workout based on how they feel at the end of it. You know, tired, sweaty, pumped, all these variables that really are not variables that you can look at to see is your workout working? Like how do you know that's working? Is that an objective measure to say, well, I felt like I worked out really hard. I'm wiped out from training, but how do you know that's even working for you? Right? Like you don't have anything objective about that. Whereas if you think about uh, the previous slides where we talk about 5 to 6 hard sets, um, the mechanical loading that's required, heavy weights, training your failure, the whole point of training in this age bracket around muscle and strength is to get stronger in a muscle building rep range on safe exercises. That's it, right? So you have one objective to go into the gym to measure whether your training and what you're doing in the gym is working for you. Strength over time. If in a muscle building rep range you are getting stronger, your program is working for you. If your loads are not increasing, if you're lifting the same loads this year that you were last year, you've made no progress. Those workouts could feel super hard and super great and super fun. But if you're training to make changes in your body, they aren't doing anything. So I always make it draw a differentiation between working out and training. Working out you can do every day and make no progress. The gym is full of this person, right? They make no gains. Training is very performance based, it's very outcome based, and there's usually structure to it. So if there's one thing I would say to remember, it's that the goal of your workouts is to get stronger over time. Essentially, you kind of want to make your warm-up weights, your working weights right now, warm-up weights in the future, right? So that would indicate that you've made progress. So that's why in programming and LLYT, we track performance in the workout. So you're logging your sets, your weights, your reps, and then over time, those have to go up. Those loads have to go up. And that's not just your goal, that's the proof. Like that's the evidence. When I have a client check in and I say, "Are you getting stronger?" She goes, "I feel like I'm getting stronger." I'm like, "Well, what does your log say? You either are or you're not. It's not a feeling, it's proof. There's proof. Does it say that did you go heavier than last week? Did you get another rep than you did last week? Then that's progression. There has to be progressive overload and strength gains over time for you to one, obviously build strength, and two, maintain muscle or build muscle, maintain bone mass, help metabolism, so on and so forth. All right. So training for fatigue, this is pretty much the descriptor of it. Short rest intervals, 30 to 60 seconds, high rep ranges, circuit training, supersets, drop sets, you know, burnouts, finishers, all these things are
All the
not
stuff I used to love.
what?
All the stuff I used to love.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. People that like to, they like the challenge of this type of training, and it's hard, right? It's really hard. But and I can appreciate that. But if you're training for progress, then it doesn't work in this phase of life. And it doesn't even work actually for strength gains and muscular and optimizing muscular gains in any chapter of life for that matter. But at this point, even if that wasn't your goal, to build a bit more muscle, although at this age it should be because otherwise you're losing it. You can't recover the same way from these workouts. There's just no way. They beat you up much more than they would have, 5, 10, whatever, 15 years ago. So emphasis on sweat, on the burn, on the pump, things like that. Usually lots of exercise per muscle group, just redundancy. It's like someone doing a hack squat, a leg press in the same workout. I mean, it's pretty much the same thing. Same movement pattern or a lunge and a split squat or a bulk. It's all the same, right? So metabolic conditioning focus. I call these like huff, huff, puff, puff workouts. These are not productive. It doesn't mean, let me qualify this. It doesn't mean you can never do these types of workouts, but if you are in a season where you're symptomatic, let's say, and you know if you are or not, then these are not productive at all. Once you are past that and you are eating enough, meaning you're not trying to lose fat, you're not eating in a calorie deficit, you're eating appropriate calories. Because you know what else happens when people do these workouts? They undereat. They always are undereating. They're either in a calorie deficit or they're just winging it. And winging it tends to be chronic undereating with these random calorie spikes when you get too hungry from undereating. So they're not productive. They they can, like I said, come back in for enjoyment range for enjoyment purposes down the road when you're past this kind of transition point. Everything feels good, all the biofeedback's nice and stable, and you are eating enough. But these also tend to be connected to the mindset of seeing the gym as a place to burn calories and lose fat. That's just not the right mindset to approach the weight room with. So we have three girls, in our house, an early 20-year-old, 28-ish person, and then two, a 14-year-old and a 17-year-old. And the one thing that I'm really proud of is the fact that we have taught our kids that the gym is for getting jacked, right? It's for getting strong, it's for building muscle, and that's it. It's not for burning fat, it's not for burning calories, it's not for getting in shape. It's to develop your body. And if you ever want to lose fat, you do it outside the gym. But the gym is for protecting your muscle, adding more muscle, developing strength, right? So on and so forth. So the result here is exhausted, but nothing changes. And not even nothing changes. This isn't workouts that are just not productive. They counterproductive. This is where the regression in your body starts to come, where someone is just feeling more water retentive and puffy and inflamed, for lack of a better word. The training for tension, this is an adjustment for a lot of people at first, is long rest intervals between sets, right? So you cannot put out maximum effort and as much force and mechanical tension on your muscles unless you are rested. So between hard sets, this is hard sets, not every set. So warm-ups, two hard sets don't require this type of rest interval. But when you're getting ready to take a set to near failure, you need a good 2 to 3 minutes, maybe let's say 90 seconds to 3 minutes, depending on the exercise. If it was like a tricep push down, you don't need like 3 minutes. But if you are doing a more compound-based movement that's going to take a lot out of you, you need to rest. And the research on training and strength development and muscle growth totally supports this, right? You are cutting your results way down if you are training in this 30 to 60 second rest interval. Moderate rep ranges, so 5 to 10. This is where heavy mechanical loading comes from. You can build muscle between 5 and 30, but it would be like if you could if if you can build it between 5 and 10, training 15 plus would be like having a grocery store across the street that has everything you want. I heard this analogy, but driving 3 miles down the road to another one that has the same thing for the same price. It's just super inefficient. So when we look at the 5 to 10 rep range, you it's easier to know when failure is because you don't have the other things that you experience on high reps, you know, uh, burn basically, thing exercises that can start to hurt more. If it's a lower body exercise, there can be a cardiovascular component where you start to breathe harder, and then the perception of difficulty just gets higher. So moderate rep ranges make the most sense because you're not building in all this additional fatigue. Remember what I said, only the last handful of reps before failure are the ones that trigger any real positive adaptations in terms of strength or muscle. So again, if it's 30 reps, it's probably the last five. 25 to 30 are the key ones. But why do the first 20? They're basically 20 warm-up reps or 25 warm-up reps to get to the ones that matter, right? So 5 to 10 is the sweet spot. It allows you to use heavier weights. Heavier weights create other adaptations, better for bone mineral density, better for tendon stiffness, things like that, that just keep your body in a more kind of, I'm going to say, youthful state in that kind of context. Structured strength progression, which means, like I said a minute ago, that's the goal. You want to get stronger over time for all sorts of reasons in life, especially as you get older, but it's also the proof that what you're doing in the gym is working for you. If you are dumbbell pressing 20 pounds now and you were dumbbell pressing 20 pounds 6 months ago, I hate to say it, but you've made no progress at all. No matter how consistent you are, no matter how hard you hit those 20-pound dumbbells or think you did, there's been no progress because you need to have progressive overload to uh, to to be the proof of to show you the proof of your progress. And the point of progressive overload is to keep the tension stimulus the same. So there is an adaptation. At some point, a weight is heavy, and then the same weight becomes a bit lighter and a bit lighter. If you don't progress that to the next level, you're essentially reducing the tension that you're exposing those muscles to. Emphasis on load and form. So load, we talked about heavier loads are going to be associated with the lower rep ranges, and the important aspect of keeping your form standardized. So from rep one to the form failure rep, they should be the same and not loosen up as you get closer to the hard reps. And that's a skill that comes with time as well and more training experience. Compound movement focus. So isolation exercises are great, but the big exercises, you're not going to get stronger or as strong on isolation movements necessarily. Like take a dumbbell lateral is a great example. I put a post up about this. No one's ever going to get strong on this exercise. Like you can be doing like 40-pound shoulder presses and you're still doing 12 and a half pound laterals, right? So this is an exercise that you're going to essentially try to squeak out, progress over time with a rep here and there. But the compound movements, multi-joint movements, squat patterns and rows and presses and all these types of things are really going to be the ones that lend themselves most favorably to progressive overload. Okay, so I put together a quiz. I don't know if Amy wants to drop it in the chat, the link, but we'll go through it together. It won't take 10 minutes, it'll take 5 minutes. It's 10 questions. And ultimately, I created four training archetypes. I called one the effort leaker,
Yeah, let me
two,
do that. Sorry, let
yeah,
me just get that sent to
I'm
them.
not going to press it yet anyways, but we'll do it. We'll go through it together. One is called the effort leaker. Two is called the fatigue chaser. Three is called the grinder. Four is the drifter. And then five is really, you got most of it going for you. I don't have an archetype for that. So if you got the link, we'll go to it. Assume everybody's there.
Well, I put it in the chat.
Yeah. So I'll give you a second. Then you guys can do it as well. And then it will tell you at the end what archetype you fall into. It'll basically highlight, don't cheat either by by some of the correct answers were pretty much part of this talk. So the question is how you're currently training. And I know there's some look like your trainers in already, so you're probably going to get all the answers right. But it just gives you a benchmark for where you're at. Okay. So the first question is, how do you know whether your training is working? I complete my planned reps and sets. If I do that, it should be working. I log my workouts to see if I'm getting stronger each week. I go by how I feel. If I worked hard, got a good pump, or feel sore the next day, it's working. Or it varies. Sometimes I track, sometimes I just go by how I feel. So, how do you know your workouts are actually doing for you what you want them to do? I guess I got to pick one too, right? I will pick this one. Number two, on your hardest work sets, how close do you get to failure? I stop when we should have done this right at the beginning, actually. I stop when it feels pretty hard, which I guess is 3 to 4 reps from failure. I take every work set to complete failure every time. Depends on the day and how I'm feeling. 0 to 2 from when I can't complete another rep in good form. Honest answers. I stop when I really feel the burn in the target muscle. So I'm going to be here. That's how I train. Number three, how long do you rest between your hardest working sets? As little as possible. I like to keep the workout moving around a minute or so because I feel ready to go again. No less than 90 seconds, but up to 3 minutes, depending on the exercise. It varies, sometimes short, sometimes longer, nothing really planned. That would be the person who really doesn't even track them at all, right? So, and this one as well. So I'm going to take that one. How many days per week do you work out? 5 to 6, even 5 to 6 plus, any 7 days. It depends on the week. I train when I can. 3 to 4 days a week, usually 2 days or fewer. What rep range do you use most often for your main lifts? 10 to 15, not too heavy, not too light. 15 to 20, those are painful reps. 5 to 10, I change it up regularly, sometimes 8, sometimes 15, sometimes 20. Basically, the answer is it varies. Okay. How often do you change exercises in your program? I change exercises every few weeks. I stick with the same for 2 to 3 months so I can progress them. I change every workout to keep things interesting or from getting bored. How do you know if you've recovered from your last workout? If I don't feel wiped out, I'm good to go. I track my workouts. If I'm stronger or matched last week, I've recovered. It varies. Sometimes I pay attention, sometimes I don't. I train according to my schedule, regardless. How many hard sets do you do per muscle group per workout? Could have made this like a test of the talk, actually.
That's what it should have been at the
I should
beginning.
have done it in the beginning next time. 10 to 15 hard sets. I'm not sure. I just follow the workout. That's assuming you're following a workout, of course, for that answer. 5 to 6, 8 to 12, spread across lots of different exercises. It varies a lot. So, no structure to this last one here. What does your training structure look like? I do circuit training or metabolic conditioning most days. It changes. Sometimes I follow a plan, sometimes I wing it. I do body part splits. I follow a structured program like a full body or upper lower. I train 5 to 6 days per week with high volume for each muscle. So I do full upper lower. Last question. What is your primary goal when you go to the gym? Get a great workout, break a sweat, feel accomplished. It varies. Sometimes strength, sometimes burning calories, sometimes just moving. Get stronger in a muscle building rep range. Hit every muscle group as hard and as often as possible. I'm optimal. Optimal, baby.
Cheater.
Okay. What's that?
I said cheater.
Yeah, I know. I knew the answers because I wrote the questions. Okay. So you guys all have your, I think it'll tell you what you're at there. Let me just move this out of the way. Go back to, was it this? Okay. So now that you got what I said you are based on your answers, you can actually, I can't see the chat right now, but you can pop them in there if you want. Maybe I can actually. What do we get? We got a grinder. That's an F, 0 out of 10. Okay. What else we got? Put your answers in here. We only got two so far. The drifter. Okay. What else we got? Okay. Let's go to the, oops.
Trisha, yeah, good. I want to see some LLYT people in here.
Yeah, let me see actually. I'm a drifter. Oh, Joan got optimal. Nice. Trisha, I would expect you guys optimal. Drifter. Apparently, drifter, I hate the gym. Okay, fair, fair. But you know what? For someone who hates the gym, it does become pretty fun to get strong. I will tell you. It kind of can become pretty addicting when your gym time has purpose rather than just going because whatever. But when you have kind of an objective to your workouts and you experience the progress of getting stronger, it's pretty fun. Another optimal drifter, although not quite true. I follow a program that changes monthly, but the main lifts are consistent. My main issue is not enough rest between sets. That's an easy fix, right? Effort leaker, effort leaker, effort leaker, effort leaker. Okay, let's look at it. So the effort leaker, this is the person that has the intensity and frequency off. So this person is typically stopping too early in sets. So they have a little bit more juice in the tank or gas in the tank and have probably a couple extra reps in place that they could get. And or they're not hitting muscles frequently enough. So this would be a person also who is training a muscle like once a week, on a traditional body part split, as opposed to minimum twice a week, which is what the research shows is optimal. And that would be an upper lower split would be the ideal way to set that up, or even 3 times a week if they're in a full body setup. So the fix is obviously you got to learn to push closer to failure, to form failure, and change the approach so that you're training muscles 2 to 3 times a week. Again, it'd be 2 times a week on an upper lower, it'd be 3 times a week if you were training only 3 days a week and you were doing a full body split. So a full body split is well, that's another conversation. The grinder, too much volume, not enough recovery. So too many workouts per week, to optimally recover from. And I would say someone who even thinks they're recovering from it, when you reduce this to a more appropriate, training recovery day ratio, I guarantee you will make better progress. This happens to everybody. Everybody that comes in from different types of training styles, when you start kind of dialing in the programming and start doing things according to really what the research says for muscle, strength shows up very quick. You have ladies that are getting stronger week in, week out, week in, week out, all the time. There's some really, really strong, ladies in our group right now. But um, too many workouts, too much volume, so too many times per week, just too many overall sets per workout. It doesn't even necessarily have to be per muscle, although it often is, multiple redundant exercises per muscle group, and then just too many sets per exercise, which also, honestly, when you do have high volume in a workout, that person also is typically a short rest interval person as well, because otherwise your workout becomes just too long, right? So reduce training, and it's just a recovery capacity issue. You just honestly you don't have the resources to recover. Remember what I that one diagram where it showed the recovery pool and everything drains from it. Life stress, training stress, undersleeping. These things all pull from the same recovery hormones, and you just don't have the same, your cup's not as full. So it drains too quick and you experience the, lack of a better word, side effects just more frequently. So um, if you reduce to 3 to 4 training days a week and you cut your volume really down to 5 to 6 hard sets per muscle per week. So the way we would set that up is I would have, let's say it was an upper lower split, right? That's obviously 4 days per week. And you're essentially doing, 2 to 3 working sets per muscle per workout. That's not total sets. You do have warm-ups to those sets, like 1 or 2 warm-up sets to get to those uh, 2 to 3 hard sets. But think back to what I said about, say, 10 sets once per week versus 5 sets twice per week. One, you have less to recover from per workout, which is great because the sooner you can recover, the sooner you can move into the positive adaptations from that workout. And you also have 2 muscle protein synthesis spikes rather than one. So super optimal compared to what the grinder does. Fatigue chaser, I'm going to save drifter to last. Fatigue chaser, optimizing for burn, sweat, exhaustion instead of mechanical tension. So um, I find for this one, you really have no way of gauging how effective. I'm not going to say good. You may leave there feeling like you had a great workout, right? Like you can do all the high rep stuff and all the metabolic work we talked about, and you get out of there, you feel pretty accomplished. Like that was hard. I worked it. I showed up. I didn't quit, and so on and so forth. That's great. But you have to respect the changes that your body's going through right now and the importance of training for muscle for all the reasons you need to be training for muscle. I haven't even talked about the fact that when you have good, uh, you know, training for muscle, it's just better for your metabolism. Your body handles calories better. Your body deals with food much better when you're properly training for muscle. Your muscles have better insulin sensitivity. If you look at all the age-related issues that show up for people that are kind of lifestyle chronic issues, they all connect to poor insulin sensitivity in the muscle, right? So this is really important for just in that capacity, fat loss. The better your body deals with food, the better you're going to have, the better opportunity you're going to have to lose fat when you get your diet dialed in for fat loss. So the fix, start training for strength, start trying to get stronger and see how fun it is to actually beat your previous records week in and week out, or nearly week in and week out on the big movements. So it's 5 to 10 reps. I mean, it could be a bit higher, it's not that this is the only range, but for the reasons I said before, it doesn't make sense to really spend too much time in rep ranges outside of this range. 2 to 3 minutes between your hard sets, obviously less in your warm-ups, and compound movements with some isolation stuff sprinkled in. I probably would have rewritten that compound movement part a little bit. But the key focus there is to focus on getting stronger, track that. So you got to track your workouts and even one rep. Amy said to me, she goes, I got 6 reps this week on those 40. I thought I was going to get 7. Well, her goal is 7. She's certainly not going to go to 45s right now. If those were 40s, I don't even know. But if they were 40-pound dumbbells, 45s is a big increase. That's like 10 pounds on 40. That's 25% increase. That ain't happening. So that's not happening for a bit. She's going to have to be able to push this for like 10 reps first. So when you're that close to fatigue to failure, which she was right there, getting an extra rep next week is progress, right? You just squeak it out.
And like I mentioned to you, like seeing this as a sport, it was me being a little less squirrely, like I call it squirrely, but I could tell as my last couple reps, I'm a little bit like fidgety with my feet. So that's even progress the next week is to see me more locked in, and not
Yeah,
necessarily kind of
progress is
fast.
also better form. You know what I mean? With the same weight or tighter or less kind of foot wiggling or things like that. You know what I mean? So, and then the drifter. This person is the workouter, the exerciser. They don't really follow any type of programming. There's no kind of structure to anything they're doing. They change exercises too often. Like, think about if you're always doing different exercises, how do you track progressive overload? You can't. You don't even have any time to do that because the new exercise came in. So this is just too much variety. And while the person gets bored, well, the gym is not supposed to be entertainment anyway. You're there for a purpose, which is to make progress, right? To have a positive uh, outcome from your training. Or maybe it's not. Maybe the person just doesn't care about that and just wants to exercise. That person's going to lose muscle. So they change programs, they change the approach, they basically change what they're doing too often for any adaptations to start to build up over time. So if you look at, you know, just the fitness industry, there's a lot of this, right? But if you look in athletics and sports training and just athletes in general, they have a lot of repetition around training because that's where the skill set is developed. That's where the adaptations come. So the fix is stick with the same movements, pick movements that you like, that are stable, that are safe, that allow you the opportunity to train really hard with good form for a good 2 to 3 months, and just track your progress and watch those loads increase, right? So same parameters for everything else. The drifter still needs, 5 to 10 reps, 5 to 6 hard sets per week, 2 to 3 minutes rest, 3 to 4 times per week training, and that drifter then becomes optimal. So look at the bottom one here. On track, already training with most variables optimized, maintain consistency and progressive load. Basically, keep up the good work. And now, Amy,
All right. So okay, it says, do I share my screen here? Let's see. Okay, I
want me to
think
stop sharing?
you did stop sharing.
No, I
So,
didn't.
okay, well, it did stop for you.
Oh,
Can
okay.
everyone see my screen here where it says Lean Bodies Consulting, start here, your roadmap? Can you see that? Okay. So essentially, I do want to share our group coaching program that we have. One reason why I need to like push this out now is we are doing our first price increase for Look Like You Train in 5 years. It has always been $75. So this is going to be your last opportunity to get in at the $75 a month versus $97. And what we offer for that is, I mean, I'm not just saying this because I'm biased because it's ours, but we're friends with a lot of other coaches out there and we see what's out there. Our business coach shows us, and we are like second to none in what we offer. And while Eric did tonight talk a lot about the training, we all know that there's another big, huge component to our success, and that is with nutrition. And so for this next round of Look Like You Train, we actually have all brand new nutrition templates that our clients are going to be getting in there. I'll kind of just give you a little sneak peek of it. Not even our group has seen this yet, but essentially, based on you're going to go to, once you sign up, you're going to be filling out a form. It's then going to calculate the calorie amount and protein that you're going to need, and it's going to send you back a meal template. Now, that meal template may not be the food items that you like, but they're there as placeholders for you. And then, of course, there's videos here exactly how to customize that template. We do weekly calls on these nutrition templates. And then we have our school here where all of our, lessons, modules are, again, this is all brand new for this next round in that you're going to come in, learn how to customize your diet. You're going to then do the 28-day deficit test. Maybe you've seen me doing these 28-day deficit challenge or these challenges that I've done over the last several months. Now this is included in our Look Like You Train program. Um, Everything from tracking, all of your biofeedback that Eric talked about, but just a real simplified, streamlined way of the way that we, like I say here, kind of in the welcome, is that it's not just a workout plan and it's not just a diet either. It is a full coaching system built to reshape your body, but also to rewire you. We have a lot of mindset. If you've followed me over the last few years, I've shared on my podcast a lot of my things like creating your health character, my daily agreement cards. Well, we have all of these in here as well because we know that it's not just one thing, it's all the things. And then, of course, the place that I love to brag on is our Facebook group. So we have a private Facebook group where all of our Look Like You Train ladies are. So we've got, like 560 ladies in here that really are a social, it's a support system. We are all working hard. I mean, we have some badasses in here that, I mean, even for myself, I'm very inspired by the strength that some of these ladies have. And that just pushes us and encourages us to, step up to the plate. And it's always better to be doing this with other people. It can be a pretty lonely world. And it's nice to know that there are other ladies. And I will say the average age probably in here is more like 56, just based on some of the challenges that I've done over the last 6 months. Like most ladies are, in that mid 50 range, but we also have like a 68-year-old in here that's kicking ass. But it's just a great place to be. And we obviously want to welcome you in there and invite you to join us. And like I said, as long as you join before March 1st, because March 2nd is the first official day of our next training block. Once we hit that day, our price goes up to $97. I'm going to put in the chat the landing page, but you'll also get this, if you signed up to come tonight, we obviously are going to send out the replay. And we are going to plug this group because we love it. We think it's a great opportunity, and it's a cost-effective place for those that maybe, you can't afford one-to-one coaching. And you have a good follow through, you pretty much, once you have a plan, you can stick to it, then this is the place to come. And if maybe from there you do need more help, well, this is why we do these tests. For example, we do the 28-day deficit test, which will highlight whether you struggle with follow through. Right now, I have a bunch of ladies doing the Rewired 60 program, which is really great for those that struggle with the follow through, struggle with the small promise keeping. They're like, hey, I know what I need to do, but I just don't seem to do it. And I can't figure out why. Well, this is where programs like this are really beneficial. And the ladies in our group can really speak to these programs, that they start to see that, wow, this is all encompassing. Because if you have followed, my journey, or you followed, me and Eric over the years, like it's really about becoming the best version of yourself. And that's what we're chasing. That's what we want for you. So, that's my plug for that. Any questions that you have for us, please put them in the chat or unmute yourself. You can also reply to any of the emails, like when we send out the replay tomorrow, if you have specific questions for Eric and you're not already in our group or you're not in the LBC community, you can ask questions there. People know in our group that, sometimes if they're maybe shy or they don't really feel comfortable asking questions, you can always email us. This is part of the group coaching, feature and benefits. We have weekly live calls where we have open Q&As. We also have lessons every week where maybe one week I'm, teaching. I did one on like how to use ChatGPT to create meal cards. If you followed us for a lot of years, you'll see that there's been some changes. We have now a meal card system and we see a lot of flexibility with that. We want people to get away from MyFitnessPal and Chronometer and tracking that way. It's just not a sustainable approach. But our next, no, the price stays the same for those of you in the group. Of course, we love our long termers in here. You are locked in. So if you join, like I said, before March 2nd, even if you're a brand new joiner, as long as you join by like March 1st, you are locked in forever at the $75 rate. We are never going to increase it for anyone that is joining. We just put it this way. Our business coach was like, if you do not increase your prices, it's going to, there are people that are charging a couple $100s a month for group coaching, and you guys are offering way too much. So you will be locked in. We love our long-termers in here, and we hope to see some of you join us for this next training block. Any other questions? I think Eric was answering most of them up in here. Yeah. But anything else, we will send out this replay. It will go out tomorrow. And then, please reach out if you are, on the fence, wondering if this is something that is right for you. We really try to, I know Eric does this. I try to tackle every question that comes up or obstacle that comes up for someone. If someone is struggling with some part of the follow through, I'm going to build a course or I'm going to bring something into our group that's going to help us because I want everyone to succeed. What if you don't have Facebook?
Yeah.
That's fine. I mean, we do love the social aspect of it, but I will
I
show
think
you.
you miss out. I think you miss out on you can totally do it because the training is pushed through an app, so you're never missing any of the training updates that or the changes that occur throughout the program. So, the first 2 weeks of any new program, we just start with a simple 3 sets of 10. And that's not how the program is going to run through the course of it, but it's just kind of like we call them acclimation weeks. They're kind of like learning weeks. The first 2 weeks of any new program, you don't even know it yet. You don't have the connection. Your brain's really involved. You're checking the workout. You know what I mean? And after couple weeks of getting into that, you know your weights, you've got your weights dialed in, and then you start to really grind. So at that point, I will make all the updates in the app. So if you weren't in Facebook, you wouldn't miss any of that. I always write a post about them, but they are auto-populated into the app. What you miss is all the content that goes into the group. The community is great, but we are putting up educational stuff, videos. We have our weekly lives. There's just a lot in there. And I'll even say, like, even our one-on-one clients are in the group, and I say to them, because of what you'd miss if you weren't. There's things that'll pop up that are valuable that would only pop up in a one-on-one situation if that issue was yours right now. So
Yeah,
there's just too much. I mean,
yeah.
you
We
just you
we
just
put a
miss
lot
out
of
on too much.
Yeah. I mean, it's totally doable. Like
Yeah.
I said, and we have in here where we say, listen, join the Facebook group. We obviously, Eric and I are in there every single day. We do send out a few intentional emails every week, but we also, I mean, Eric does a post every single day. I do a post every single day. That would just bog down everyone's email. So there's just things that you would miss out on. Do you absolutely have to? No. I mean, this is why everything is in school, and school is a platform that you can, check it online. You can have the app on your phone, and it's really, really easy to use. But I would say for those that kind of struggle, like this is where you need to be. Because I mean, even for me, I'm having a low week. I'm coming into the group and I am looking at the posts from other ladies in here that,
I mean, the
inspired
food
me.
ideas.
Yeah, I do all of my meal cards in here. Again, you'll see those resources in our school, like we've got a whole section here where, they can come in and the meal card method. I give all my master documents in here. So if you've got a 400-calorie meal, you can come in here and you have access to that. But in lifetime, like December, everyone knows in the group, I went through a crock pot frenzy. And so I was just creating new meal cards like every other day and sharing them in the group. And you will miss out on that. But definitely deliver.
There are a few people that don't use Facebook, and I know one girl, she's been in our group in our program for a couple years, but she's not in our Facebook group.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
doable, but I think you miss out on something that's really valuable.
yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Well, you cut it in time, Eric. You didn't go over. We got you off before an hour and a half. Thank you guys for coming. Do you still have to do the biweekly photos? No. In fact, let me show you our tracker. So again, it's all kind of self, driven. We do have like a 28-day tracker that everyone gets. So let me come show you this. So everyone in the group will have access to what we call the 28-day tracker. And in here, this becomes your own document. You actually own it. What we like to have access to it is if you're trying to troubleshoot or you're struggling with something. So you'll see all these tabs down here we have where you're going to put your stats in. There's a place to put your stat photos, but I don't have access to those. Those are completely yours once you take ownership of this document. But it's a place to track your meals, meal by meal. It's a place where you have your biofeedback. Like these are all going to be in here starting March. And if you're joining actually for this round, one bonus is we're going to do the 28-day deficit test live with you, versus like if joining on your own, which is still fine. It's self-driven and we have that all self-driven, but everyone knows, even like those that are doing my Rewired 60 right now, when you're doing it collectively as a group, there's just more power in it. So we will be doing the 28-day deficit test together because this is all brand new for the March round. So we're excited about it. Any other questions? I'll just check the chat one more time, or I know Eric, you can probably see it.
I think I got most of them.
Okay, good. All right. Well, thank you guys for coming. We will send out this recording. Um, you know,
Yeah, thanks for staying for the whole thing. Appreciate it.
Yes, hopefully you learned something. You're going to start training hard. Sets to 1 to 2 reps shy of failure. I'm telling you, I look around like Eric and I really don't see anyone really training that way. And that's the key. It really is. So have a great night. Take care.